early 2016, the tennis world was rosy for Australia's Bernard Tomic. He'd just reached a career-high world ranking of 17th and was coming off 3 consecutive seasons where he picked up an ATP title. He'd also just earned more than $1 million in 2015 winnings alone, let alone sponsorships and endorsements. But despite going on to make more millions in 2016, the world began to see the unravelling of one of Australia's best young talents. He'd already earned the unfavourable nickname Tomic the Tank Engine for being accused of throwing away matches and appearing to lack effort on occasions. But it all came to a head after his first round straight-set loss to Misha Zverev at this year's Wimbledon.
You know, wasn't mentally and physically there with my mental state to perform, and I don't know why, but you know, I felt a little bit bored out there. So, you know, to be completely honest with you.
After collecting his $45,000 for losing in the first round, he came under a lot of fire from both pundits and past players for his comments. He also lost a major sponsorship agreement with tennis equipment maker Head, who said his opinions in no way reflect our attitude for tennis, our passion, professionalism and respect for the game. On Sunday, Australian broadcaster Melissa Doyle sat down with Tomic on 7 Network's Sunday Night, where the tennis star gave a very frank and candid account of his approach to his sport.
Throughout my career, I've given 100%. I've given also 30%, but if you balance it out, I think all my career has been around 50% and haven't really tried.
Despite an obvious lack of love for the sport, the 24-year-old is showing no signs of leaving it. He says he'll continue to play and compete, albeit with the sole intention of winning enough money to set up his post-tennis life. But when asked what advice he'd give to a young aspiring tennis player, he had this to say.
Don't play tennis. Do something you love and enjoy, because it's a grind and it's a tough life. My position, I'm trapped, I have to do it, I like it, I'm going to continue to do it. But that 14-year-old kid has a choice always.
The Australian star will continue to divide tennis, if not the wider sporting community. Some will see a 24-year-old spoilt man who simply became too rich too quick, while others will see an individual in desperate need of a guiding hand. But love him or loathe him, you haven't seen or heard the last of Bernard Tomic.
So to try and make some sense of what Tomic may be experiencing, I'm joined by James Beale, a senior lecturer on sports psychology at the University of East London. James, first of all, thank you very much for coming on to speak with us. Now, in that interview, he looks very confused, he looks a bit lost. In your opinion, do you think that him speaking out so candidly, so openly, is a veiled cry for help?
Possibly partially. I think, you know, he's very clear in his position. He does say he's confused, but it's clear that he's confused. I think really, if we're going to look at Bernard Tomic, what we need to do is perhaps look a little bit further back in his past and start looking at times when perhaps he did enjoy tennis and what's happened in between then and now.
Do you think then this is a trademark of a young man, or an example of young men such as himself, who all of a sudden at a very young age he starts making a lot of money and he starts acting out accordingly because it changes his lifestyle?
I think there's a little bit of that, but I also think you've got to look at sport in general and tennis in general. So at 12 years old, in that interview that you referred to in your clip, he said that he loved tennis from the ground to the sky, in terms of it was the thing that he was most passionate about. He spoke very clearly about his heroes being Leighton Hewitt and Roger Federer, so he wanted Hewitt's heart and Federer's ground strokes. And what's happened between then and now, and I think what happens in sport is that we have desire for an identity above and beyond just that one thing. But in order to be successful in that one thing, so in this case tennis, he's had to make sacrifices. Now those sacrifices have been things like not socialising in a normal way. So when all the other kids are out at school discos or drinking or whatever it is that teenagers do, he's not been going through that. He's been in a position where he's had to be in a hotel room surrounded by adults and then play a tournament for that weekend. So he's missed out on those things, and the opportunity cost of that is that he's not been socialised correctly. And as a consequence, what I believe is that when we do suddenly, he gets this sudden mass of income and notoriety, we're not quite been socialised in a way which it teaches him how to handle that. So I think that's definitely a big factor in it. I do think that he got rich too quickly, but also I think the sport doesn't enable you to progress in a way whereby you're sufficiently mature in order to behave appropriately given your circumstances when you do make it. And I don't think he's the first tennis player coming out of Australia to act in those ways either.
So if he came to you in a hypothetical sense and he said to you that he's bored, that he's not been playing at 100%, what kind of advice would you give him then to try and adjust correctly and to deal with everything that he has on his plate?
Well, the first thing is that he's playing for money. And I think that when we're playing for money, eventually the motivation is going to diminish. And he talks about being trapped. Now, of course he's trapped. Where else is a young man of 24 going to get paid the salary that he gets from playing tennis? So losing in the first round £35,000, 3 hours on court. So I think we go back to what he loved about the game in the first instance. And if we go back to that, we start looking at what fundamentally it was that he enjoyed about it in the first instance, then I think we can start to try and look how we can recreate that in future. Possibly I might speak to him a bit about legacy. I also would talk to him about doing incorporating into his lifestyle things that he enjoys doing. And I think once we had that, then we'd see a renewed vigour for his sport.
And he has been approached in order to get some help both on and off the course in the tennis world as well. But do you think that he's in a mind space where only he himself can be the only one to help him? Or do you think that there can be some sort of outside help as well?
I think I think in this position, I believe that if I worked with him using the techniques that I use at the University of East London, that I would have no problem in terms of helping him. I think he would need to engage in the process, but I don't think he's in a position where he's got access to the information which would turn around his motivation in the same way that a professional like myself has got, in order to enable somebody to start seeing the good rather than the bad, and to start realising and start influencing motivation. So I don't think it's something that he can do on his own. I think he's going to need to start reflecting. I don't think that's something that he's in a position to do right now.
Well, James, thank you again for coming on.